The mysterious death of Princess Diana in 1997 didn't just shock the world, it left a deep wound in the hearts of her two young sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. At the time, they were far too young to grasp the full weight of what had happened. But the loss, the lingering doubts, and the countless unanswered questions stayed with them throughout their childhood. Over the years, those once little boys have grown into men. Men with power, with voices that cannot be silenced, and, most importantly, with the right to speak the truth. And now, nearly 3 decades later, one of Diana's sons has finally confirmed what millions have suspected all along: her death was not as simple or straightforward as the public was led to believe. They no longer wish to stay silent. They want justice, and they want the world to know that their mother deserves to be defended, to be heard, and to have the truth restored. Join us to uncover this solved mystery. Princess Diana was not just a member of the royal family. She was a warm, kind, and caring soul who made it her mission to help those in need. People everywhere admired her because of her big heart and her gentle, loving nature. No matter who you were, where you came from, or what struggles you faced, Diana had a way of making you feel seen, valued, and loved. Throughout her life, Diana gave her time and energy to people going through hard times. Whether it was the homeless, the sick, lonely older people, or troubled young people, Diana was there, offering a smile, a hug, and a kind word when it mattered most. She didn't do it because it was her duty as a princess. She did it because she truly cared. From 1989 to 1996, Diana worked closely with different charities that helped young people without homes, people fighting addiction, and elderly people in need of comfort. She often visited shelters, hospitals, and nursing homes, bringing warmth wherever she went. When she walked into a room, her kind eyes and gentle words made people feel safe and hopeful, even in their darkest moments. One of her most cherished roles was as the president of Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children. From the moment she took on the role, Diana dedicated herself to supporting the young patients and their families. She didn't just visit for show. She would sit beside the children, hold their hands, and talk to them about their dreams and fears. Her kindness gave them courage when they needed it most. Diana also loved the arts and believed in supporting young talent. She held special positions with the Natural History Museum, the Royal Academy of Music, and the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art from 1984 to 1996. Through these roles, she encouraged young artists and performers, helping them chase their dreams and giving them the confidence to shine. Her generous spirit reached far beyond the borders of the United Kingdom. In 1988, she became a patron of the British Red Cross, showing support for the charity's work in places like Australia and Canada. Diana wasn't afraid to roll up her sleeves and help personally. She often visited the Royal Brompton Hospital, where she comforted seriously ill patients, held their hands, and sat by their beds during difficult moments. Her compassion for children led her to join Barnardo's, a charity helping young people in need. Starting in 1984, she also worked with the Chester Childbirth Appeal, raising funds for new mothers and babies. Her efforts helped the charity raise over £1 million, all thanks to her sincere dedication. What made Diana so special wasn't just the number of charities she supported, but the way she connected with people. Prince Harry's confession would change the view of the monarchy. But before that, let's dive into the upbringing and growth of the people's princess. Diana Frances Spencer was born on July 1st, 1961, at Park House, a lovely home on the Queen's private estate in Sandringham, Norfolk. She was the fourth child of John Spencer, Viscount Althorp, and his wife Frances. From the very start, Diana was surrounded by royal traditions and old family customs. Her family had a long history of working closely with the royal family, and both her grandmothers once served as ladies-in-waiting to the Queen Mother. This made the bond between the Spencer family and the royal household very special. But even with all this tradition and elegance, Diana's arrival wasn't quite the joyful moment it should have been. Her parents had been hoping for a boy to carry on the family name. Because of this, it took them a whole week to decide on her name. In the end, they called her Diana Frances, honoring both her mother and a distant family relative. Diana grew up in a world of big houses, important family duties, and grand expectations. Living so close to the royal family meant that, from a very young age, that she often played with Princes Andrew and Edwards. Her father's job as an equerry to the king, and later the queen, allowed Diana to see what royal life was like up close. But behind the beautiful surroundings and royal connections, Diana's early years were full of sadness. Before Diana was born, her parents lost a baby boy in 1960, leaving the family heartbroken. Though Diana's birth brought some light back into their lives, the family's pain didn't completely fade. When her younger brother Charles was born 3 years later, there was a brief moment of joy, but unhappiness quietly lingered in the background. As a child, Diana had to watch as her parents' marriage slowly fell apart. Their arguments and unhappiness filled the house, and when they finally divorced, it left a deep mark on young Diana's heart. The custody battle that followed was difficult. Diana's grandmother chose to side with her father, and he was granted custody of the children. Being separated from her mother at such a tender age was something Diana never truly got over. She would cry every Sunday evening after visiting her mother, counting the days until she could see her again. Those lonely moments left a sadness inside her that stayed with her for years. In 1976, her life changed again when her father married Rain, the Countess of Dartmouth. Instead of bringing peace, this new stepmother made Diana's life even harder. Diana and her siblings disliked Rain so much they gave her the nickname Acid Rain. The house grew tense, and Rain's cruel remarks about Diana's mother only deepened the pain between them. Then, in 1978, Diana experienced something unsettling. She told a close friend she had a bad feeling that something terrible might happen to her father. The very next day, John Spencer suffered a brain hemorrhage and had to be rushed to the hospital. Making things worse, Rain kept Diana and her siblings away from their father's bedside. It was a painful time that left Diana heartbroken and filled with anger. Even with all the sadness in her young life, Diana held on to small moments of happiness. Growing up wasn't always easy for young Diana. School was tough for her, not because she didn't try, but because her heart was heavy with troubles from home. The sadness and problems in her family made it hard for her to focus on her lessons, and no matter how hard she worked, the pain she carried followed her into the classroom. In the end, Diana didn't pass her O-level exams, important tests for students in Britain. It was a sad moment for her, and it made her feel like she had let herself down. At just 16 years old, Diana made a brave decision. She left school. Even though she didn't have a diploma, she had something even stronger, a desire to find her own way. Her parents were strict and wouldn't let her move out or live on her own until she turned 18. But Diana was determined. She quietly made plans to take small steps toward independence, dreaming of a life where she could be free and happy. In 1978, Diana took her first step. She spent 3 months working as a nanny for a family in the countryside of Hampshire. It wasn't a glamorous job, but it gave her a chance to grow up a little, learn responsibility, and experience life outside of her family's world. After that, she went to a finishing school in Switzerland, a place where young women learned manners and skills for adult life. But Diana only stayed for 1 term before deciding it wasn't for her. When she returned to London, Diana was ready for a fresh start. She moved into an apartment with a couple of friends and began taking control of her own life. She signed up for a cooking course to learn practical skills and even took on a few simple jobs. One of her favorite jobs was teaching dance to little children. Diana had always loved music and movement, and sharing that joy with kids made her heart happy. Life wasn't always smooth, though. At one point, Diana had a skiing accident that forced her to rest for a while, but even that couldn't take away her excitement for life and adventure. Every job she took and every challenge she faced made her stronger, kinder, and more understanding of other people's struggles. Then an unexpected event hit. She met Charles. How did this series of events unfold? Let's find out. One weekend, while visiting her family home at Althorpe, Diana noticed something unexpected. Her older sister Sarah was spending time with Prince Charles, the big brother of Diana's childhood friends, Princes Andrew and Edward. Back then, Diana didn't think much of Charles. To her, he seemed quiet and a little distant. Sarah, on the other hand, was completely smitten with the prince. It was clear how much she admired him. At just 16, Diana wasn't thinking about love, especially not with someone as serious and royal as Prince Charles. She stayed in the background, respecting her sister's feelings. But as time passed and Diana turned 19, life had a way of changing things. One weekend at a friend's country home, Diana and Charles ended up having a conversation. They spoke about his great-uncle's funeral, and to Diana's surprise, Charles opened up about feeling lonely. That moment softened the space between them. Soon, Diana noticed the prince looking at her differently, and it became clear that his interest had shifted from Sarah to her. Prince Charles invited Diana to go sailing and later asked her to visit Balmoral, the royal family's grand and private estate in Scotland. Though flattered, Diana felt nervous. She had never been part of such a world filled with castles, important people, and royal traditions. It felt overwhelming for a simple, shy girl from the countryside. As Diana spent more time with Charles, she realized that being with him wouldn't be easy. There was another person always around Camilla Parker Bowles. At first, Camilla seemed kind and helpful, even giving Diana advice about Charles. But over time, Diana felt something wasn't quite right. She began to sense that Camilla's connection to Charles was far deeper than anyone let on. Eventually, Charles confessed his love for Diana and asked her to marry him. It should have been a joyful moment, but Diana had doubts. Their relationship had been short and awkward, and the idea of becoming queen at such a young age frightened her. And was it true love, or was she being swept up by royal expectations, even with her heart full of questions? Diana said yes. When Diana and Prince Charles announced their engagement, the world couldn't help but celebrate. People were excited to see a quiet, kind young woman become a princess. But behind all the cheers and applause, Diana was going through a tough time. After the big announcement, Diana traveled to Buckingham Palace, expecting a warm welcome from her future in-laws. Instead, she was met with a cold and uncertain reception. The halls felt empty, and the people there didn't seem to know why she was there. It was nothing like the warm, welcoming atmosphere she had imagined. The palace, so grand and beautiful, felt more like a lonely place than a home. Things didn't get better when Diana arrived at the palace. She was told she couldn't continue her job as a nursery assistant, which had been one of the few things that made her happy. She missed the simple joys of her old life, like laughing with her roommates. The palace was beautiful, but Diana felt trapped, longing for the voices and the life she had left behind. Then, Diana received an invitation to a charity ball where she was expected to appear as Prince Charles's fiancée. It was a night full of fancy gowns, sparkling jewelry, and famous faces. Diana had the chance to meet Princess Grace of Monaco, who had also married into royalty, feeling overwhelmed by the stiff royal rules and endless events. Diana shared her worries with Grace. Grace's words were gentle, but they carried a quiet warning about how difficult Diana's life as a royal might become. But the hardest moment came when Diana discovered something she never expected. While getting ready for the wedding, Diana overheard a conversation between Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles, in which Charles confessed his deep love for Camilla. Diana's heart sank. Then she found a bracelet Charles had secretly made for Camilla, engraved with their pet names, Gladys and Fred. Holding the bracelet, Diana felt like everything she believed in was falling apart. She thought about calling off the engagement, but soon found herself lost in doubt and confusion. In need of comfort, Diana turned to her siblings, hoping they'd help her make sense of everything. But instead of support, they told her it was too late to turn back. They urged her to go ahead with the wedding and learn to adapt to royal life, feeling like there was no other choice. Diana reluctantly agreed. As the wedding day approached, Diana's nervousness grew. She tried to push away her fears and focus on doing what was expected of her. On February 24th, 1981, the engagement was officially announced, and Diana chose a stunning sapphire ring for herself. She gave up her job and moved into Clarence House before eventually settling at Buckingham Palace, where the wedding would take place. She was about to make history, the first English woman in over 300 years to marry the future king. Then, on July 29th, 1981, the whole world watched as Diana, just 20 years old, walked down the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral. The grand ceremony had over 500 guests, with millions more watching on TV. Diana wore a breathtaking dress, her veil trailing behind her as she stepped out of the carriage. Even though she felt nervous, she walked toward Charles, determined to make it to the altar. As Diana moved down the aisle beside him, she couldn't shake the feeling that Camilla was watching her from the pews, but her love for Charles was strong enough to push aside her doubts. The ceremony seemed perfect, but there were small signs that things weren't as flawless as they appeared. Diana stumbled over Charles's name in her vows, and Charles made mistakes, too. The couple also chose to leave out a traditional vow where the bride promises to obey the groom. While small, this moment foreshadowed the challenges they would face in their marriage. When Diana married Prince Charles, she believed she was stepping into a beautiful fairy tale. She dreamed of a life filled with love, warmth, and laughter. But after the grand wedding, those dreams slowly began to fade. The honeymoon, which should have been a time of closeness and new beginnings, felt cold and distant. Charles was often buried in books or busy with his hobbies, leaving Diana alone with her thoughts. They were rarely by themselves, always surrounded by royal staff and duties. And even when they were alone, there were few tender words between them. Diana's heart felt heavier with each passing day. As time went on, the sadness inside her quietly grew. Their marriage started to show cracks, and Diana began battling an eating disorder. Some people around her noticed, but very few truly understood how deep her pain went. A big part of her heartache was caused by Camilla, who remained close to Charles. Diana often had dreams about Camilla, waking up with a hollow feeling inside. Charles's cold attitude only made things worse. He didn't seem to care about how she felt, and the distance between them kept growing. In October 1981, Diana's world brightened a little when she found out she was going to have a baby. It gave her a reason to smile again and filled her heart with hope. But the pregnancy wasn't easy. Her health was fragile, and her emotions were like waves up one moment, down the next. One day, during a heated argument with Charles, Diana fell down the stairs while pregnant. At first, people thought it was an accident. Later, Diana admitted she had thrown herself down in desperation, hoping Charles might finally notice her pain. But instead of rushing to help, Charles rode away, leaving her hurt and alone. Queen Elizabeth was deeply upset by what happened, but Charles showed little concern. For Diana, it was another moment of heartbreak. Diana often reached out for help, crying quietly for someone to care, but no one seemed to hear her. In June 1982, she gave birth to Prince William. Holding her baby brought her joy, and for a while it felt like life might get better. But soon after Diana was overcome with deep sadness. She suffered from postpartum depression, a darkness she struggled to explain. It pushed her even further from the royal family, leaving her feeling like a stranger in her life. 2 years later, Diana was pregnant again. This time, the sickness wasn't as bad, and for a brief moment, she and Charles seemed closer. At one of her medical appointments, Diana found out they were having a boy. She kept this secret to herself, knowing Charles had hoped for a daughter. The final weeks before the birth were filled with gentle happiness, and Diana held on to it tightly. When Prince Harry was born, Diana had hoped it would bring them together. But sadly, it did the opposite. Charles became even more distant. Even when the Queen scolded him for ignoring Diana, he didn't change. Once again, Diana was left to face her heartache on her own. As time passed, the problems between Diana and Prince Charles grew bigger. What started as small misunderstandings turned into deep cracks in their marriage. By 1986, after 5 years together, it became clear to everyone around them they were not a good match. They had a big age difference, very different personalities, and separate hobbies. Diana longed for love, kindness, and someone to truly understand her. But Charles often seemed distant, busy with his world, and rarely paid attention to her feelings. During this lonely time, Diana found comfort in the company of James Hewitt, a kind man who once taught horseback riding to the royal family. Meanwhile, Charles quietly reconnected with Camilla Parker Bowles, a woman he had loved long before marrying Diana. Their hearts were drifting apart, and both sought happiness elsewhere. Soon, whispers of Diana's secret friendship with James Hewitt began to spread. Some people even cruelly suggested that Prince Harry looked more like Hewitt than Charles. But this was not true, as Harry was born long before Diana ever met Hewitt. Still, rumors don't need truth to cause pain, and by then, the world was watching every step they took. By 1987, the public began to notice the sadness between Diana and Charles. Photographs of them together showed cold stares and forced smiles. The media even gave them the nickname the Glums because of how unhappy they looked. Dinners at the palace were quiet, filled with awkward silences, and the love that once sparkled was nowhere to be seen. In 1989, Diana could no longer hold her pain inside. At a birthday party for Camilla's sister, Diana bravely walked up to Camilla and told her that she knew everything about her affair with Charles. It was a bold and emotional moment. Though it was kept secret at first, the world would later learn about this powerful confrontation. Then, in 1992, a book shook the royal family. Author Andrew Morton released Diana, Her True Story, filled with heartbreaking details about Diana's struggles, loneliness, and sadness inside the palace walls. At first, people thought it was written with help from Diana's friends and family. But after Diana's death, it was revealed that she herself had secretly recorded tapes, pouring out her heart so people could finally hear her truth. Worried about the growing scandals, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip tried to save the marriage. They arranged quiet meetings, and Prince Philip even wrote Diana heartfelt letters, asking her to see things from Charles's side. The letters were difficult to read, but Diana appreciated the effort. Some said the bond between Diana and Philip was tense, while others believed there was no lasting bad blood between them. Finally, in December 1992, Prime Minister John Major stood before the House of Commons and announced that Charles and Diana had agreed to separate. It was a peaceful, quiet ending to a marriage that had started with so much hope. Even though they stayed married on paper for a few more years, their hearts had already parted long ago. They finally divorced in 1996. After Princess Diana separated from Prince Charles, a brand new chapter of her life began. It was a time filled with freedom, loneliness, and quiet moments of reflection. Even though she was no longer an official royal, Diana stayed in her lovely home at Kensington Palace, a special apartment she had called home since the early days of her marriage. It was her safe place, where she could relax, escape the public eye, and find peace after long days filled with royal duties. Though she stepped away from royal life, Diana was allowed to keep using some rooms at St. James Palace and move her office to Kensington Palace. This gave her the freedom to focus on her charity work, something that always stayed close to her heart. From September 1996, she began paying her bills and covering her personal expenses. Yet, she was still allowed to wear the beautiful jewelry she had received during her marriage and travel with her sons on royal planes when needed. Many believed Diana might return to her family's home at Althorp, the grand estate where she grew up. But those rumors weren't true. She couldn't live in the cozy garden house cottage there, as it was already promised to a staff member. Still, her brother, Lord Spencer, made sure she had safe and comfortable options, with advice from the police about her security. Even with all the changes, Diana built a life filled with friendships and exciting new experiences. She stayed close to famous friends like Elton John, Liza Minnelli, George Michael, Michael Jackson, and fashion designer Gianni Versace. These friendships brought laughter, joy, and sweet moments away from the endless cameras and headlines. She was heartbroken when Versace passed away in 1987 and attended his funeral to say goodbye. In 1995, Diana's heart quietly opened again when she met a kind, shy heart surgeon named Hasnat Khan. Her friends later called him the true love of her life. Hasnat was gentle, smart, and humble, everything Diana adored. They kept their relationship secret to protect his privacy, with Diana sometimes making up little stories to keep the press away. Their love lasted for almost 2 years, though people have different versions about how it ended. Some say Hasn't ended it, while others say it was Diana. During a later inquest, Hasn't himself said it was Diana who decided to let go in the summer of 1997. She started a relationship with Dodi Fayed, but it didn't last. She passed away. The world's heart broke on August 31st, 1997. News spread quickly Princess Diana had passed away in a terrible car accident in Paris. The car she was in crashed inside the Pont de l'Alma tunnel as they tried to escape from photographers who were chasing them. Alongside Diana were her companion, Dodi Fayed, and their driver, Henri Paul. Sadly, both men lost their lives that night, too. Only one person survived, Trevor Rees-Jones, a bodyguard for Dodi's family. Though he was badly hurt, he lived to share what little he could remember of that tragic evening. A few days later, on September 5th, Queen Elizabeth II spoke to the nation in a rare and emotional speech. She spoke with love and respect about Diana, about the joy she brought, the kindness she shared, and how deeply she touched people's lives. The very next day, on September 6th, Diana's funeral was held at Westminster Abbey in London. It became one of the most watched moments in television history. Over 32 million people in the UK tuned in, around 50 million watched from the United States, and in total, about 2.5 billion people around the world came together to say goodbye to the people's princess. The funeral was filled with tears, memories, and love. One of the saddest sights was young Prince William and Prince Harry, bravely walking behind their mother's coffin. They were joined by their father, Prince Charles, their grandfather, Prince Philip, and Diana's brother, Lord Spencer. The scene of two heartbroken boys saying goodbye to their beloved mother touched the entire world. When Princess Diana passed away, young Prince Harry was just 12 years old. The pain was too big to understand, and instead of crying, he felt numb and confused. Diana wasn't just a princess to him. She was the loving mother who took him to soccer games, sneaked him out for burgers, and made everyday moments special. Suddenly, she was gone, and the world seemed to mourn louder than he could. Harry later admitted how strange it felt to see millions of people grieving for someone they had never even met. Crowds gathered, flowers covered the streets, and tears fell everywhere. But inside, Harry didn't feel ready to cry. It all felt too unreal. He remembered the first time he truly cried for his mother was during her funeral, as she was laid to rest on a quiet island at the Althorpe estate. After that, it would be a long time before he allowed those emotions to come out again. For both Harry and his brother William, life after Diana's death was about keeping strong faces for the world. Cameras followed them everywhere, and people watched to see how the young princes would carry on. Deep down, both struggled to cope. Harry confessed that bottling up his feelings for so long had deeply affected his life, relationships, and work. Even years later, the loss of their mother remained a painful, quiet shadow in their hearts, a loss they would carry forever. Nearly 30 years have passed, and the truth is finally beginning to surface not through cold reports, but from the very sons of Princess Diana. The silence is over, and justice is calling. Diana was more than a symbol of compassion. She was a mother who endured profound pain and injustice until her final breath. And now, those who loved her have the right to demand truth and restore the honor of a woman who still lives on in the hearts of millions. If you believe the truth matters, if you believe Princess Diana deserves justice, please share this video. Together, we can help her voice be heard once more. Together, we can speak up for her, for justice, and for everyone who has ever suffered in silence.